Disclaimer. This is an audiobook recording performed for entertainment purposes through fair use. I do not claim any of the text being read to be mine or written by me. This is Twisted by Laurie Halse Anderson. Warning. This story is not for children. It contains talks of abuse, violence, assault, both sexual and physical, drugs, alcohol, and suicidal ideation. Listener discretion is advised. 31. After school, I took the C bus into town to the county courthouse to meet with Mr. Benson, my probation officer. He was a big guy, ex-Marine plus 60 pounds, gray in his buzz cut, thick glasses, and a smile that reminded me of a hungry possum. The waiting room was the size and temperature of a meat locker, and it was lit by blinding fluorescent lights. There was a board secretary at one end and a coffee pot on the other that looked like it hadn't been used since the late 1980s. Old copies of Highlights magazine and Good Housekeeping were piled on the metal table in the corner. I sat. How did I end up with a hardcore thing like a judge and a trial and a probation officer? Look up the laws about property damage. It's a good thing they never found out what I really wanted to do. Spray painting the school was Plan B. The foul deed, Plan A, involved a bomb, an entertaining smoke bomb that would have forced them to close school on a beautiful spring day. It seemed like a surefire way to become a hero. Then I found myself dreaming about a real bomb, about blowing up the building. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't going to hurt anybody. I planned on using a timer that at 3 o'clock in the morning, the entire building would explode into small standardized pieces. And I wanted to make a statement. After a week of planning, I started having nightmares about explosions and timers that went bad. All that broken glass was bound to hurt someone. The fire might spread from treetop to treetop until it lit the neighborhood around the school. Then the stores on Grant Boulevard, and then the Buckeye Mall would go up in flames, and the police would corner me, and there'd be a tense standoff with their weapons drawn. And as I'd raise my hand over my head, one of them would think that I was reaching for a weapon, and they'd blast away. I'd be the dead boy next on CNN for sure. By deciding to spray paint a few harmless slogans, I had saved hundreds of lives and thousands, if not millions, in property damage. But when they arrested me, I realized that people might not understand if I explained that part. I never told anyone. I thought about it from time to time, but I never told. The secretary looked up from her nails when Mr. Benson opened the door. A woman my mom's age hurried out. I followed Mr. Benson inside and took my chair. He shuffled papers on his desk and smiled like hundreds of big teeth at me. He had told me that he had a great report from Mr. Pirelli and another nice one from Joe, the head custodian at school. I nodded. How are your classes going? Great, I said. How's your dad? Why? Did he call you? No. It's just people like your father want to send their kids away to summer camp, not to a probation officer. I wanted to make sure things were okay. He's fine, I said. He works a lot. Well, give him my best. He scribbled something on a piece of paper. That's that. Work hard at school, keep your nose clean, and come back in a month. Again, with the nose clean thing. Authority figures had a pathological fear of boogers. That's how I saw it. 32. The explosion hit us as soon as I opened the door at 4:30 on Friday afternoon. Good thing I was in front. Hannah didn't have the body mass to absorb that much punishment. Oh my God, where have you guys been? Don't you know what time it is? You're not even dressed. Mom was screaming so loud she set off car alarms 3 streets back. She was decked in black velvet pants, pearl earrings, a necklace of jingle bells, a sweater covered in stone-looking reindeer and antlers. Reindeer. Uh-oh, Hannah whispered. There was no nice way to say it. Our mom was a Christmas freak. Every stinking thing about Christmas was holy. Not the church stuff, you could understand that. But the rest of it. Decorations brought down from the attic as soon as the Thanksgiving dishes were done. Carols playing 24/7, candles with smoking stenches of holiday cheer, cookies that were not for eating, but for atmosphere. It was nauseating.
Worst of all was the stupid family photo that always went on the front of our Christmas cards. 17 years worth of those pictures were lined up in military position on the wall in the living room. In the first one, I was a month old. I looked like a deformed vegetable swaddled in a Santa suit. Hannah and I sprinted upstairs to change while Mom stomped around the kitchen. "Where is your father?" she yelled again as she slammed the receiver down on the kitchen phone. If he was smart, on a plane to Tokyo. I pulled the sweater over my head. "Why don't we just Photoshop him in?" "Only if we can add a mustache and crossed eyes," Hannah called from the bathroom. "I can hear you both," Mom yelled up the stairs, "and you're not funny. Do you know how hard it is to get time with Davis Gunnarsson?" I tugged at the bottom of the sweatshirt, but it stayed at the level of my belly button. I looked in the mirror hung on the back of the door. Not cool. "Yeah, I'm not wearing this," I shouted. "Wear it or die," Mom shouted back. Hannah pushed open the door, almost smacking me in the face with it. Oh, snap! She couldn't say anything after that, because she was writhing on the floor, pointing at me, and laughing so hard she could barely breathe. 15 minutes after we walked in the front door, we were breaking the speed limit trying to get to the photography studio of Mr. Davis Gunnarsson. Is there anything more embarrassing than being driven around by your mom? Well, yes, actually, if you're wearing a reindeer sweatshirt that's 2 sizes too small. "I left messages for your father on every number I have for him." Mom accelerated to make it through an intersection light turning red. "I emailed him directions to the Gunnarsons, too." "Why can't we just use your camera and take pictures in the kitchen?" Hannah asked. "Or use your studio," I added. "No way," Hannah said. "It smells like dog poo." Mom did most of her pet photography in her clients' homes, but she rented a small climate-controlled garage for people who wanted to pose their pooch in front of fake photos of backdrops of the Hawaiian beach or Egyptian pyramids. And no, I am not making that up. The studio does not smell like dog poo. Mom's eyes darted left and right as she coasted through a stop sign. "It's perfectly clean, but my equipment isn't good enough. I need better lights, the right filters." I rolled down my window for some air. "You should buy them then. You take good pictures. Better than this guy, I bet." "You think?" "Hell yeah. It's about time you give up the doggies and kittens." "Don't swear," she said automatically. She hit the turn signal, checked the rearview mirror, and sped past the taxi cab. "I've thought about it." "If you don't kill us in the next 5 minutes, I'll help you find space." "That would be nice." Mom made a hard left into the parking lot and hit the brakes. "We're here." Dad wasn't. We waited for an hour, but he didn't show. Mom had a fit, then rescheduled. If Dad ever explained why he didn't show up or call, I didn't hear about it. When the mail arrived the next day, it had an interim notice from all of my teachers. He came out of his lair long enough to ground me until the end of time. Again. He also confiscated my power cord to my computer. I spent Sunday combing through real estate listings and found 2 properties for Mom to look at. She didn't sign a lease for either one, but she asked me to please work a little harder to bring up my grades, and brought me a new power cord. 33. On the last day of September, we had to attend a senior assembly about college. I sat next to Yoda, who slept. He had already filed his applications. Now it was just a matter of seeing who wanted to throw more financial aid at him. Chip Milbury and his minions sat 2 rows behind us. I stayed alert in case they wanted to lob a hand grenade. Chip hadn't retaliated yet, and that made things worse. The speaker said that college deadlines were firm, correct spelling was important, and choosing a college was a serious decision. After the assembly, I walked with Yoda to Hannah's field hockey game. Her team had sort of adopted him as a community service project after he'd quit football. They thought his glasses were cute. Whenever he kissed my sister, horrifying, yes, the team would be all, "Aww," the way that girls do when they see puppies, ponies, and baby ducks. The coach liked his ability to spot weaknesses in the opposing team. They hadn't lost a game since Yoda sat on the end of the bench. stat tracker in hand. Hannah was playing center forward with an astounding brutality. The referees didn't care, and the other team quickly learned that it was less painful to stay out of her way. By halftime, she had taken 4 shots and scored twice. The second half opened with another lightning-fast breakaway by Hannah and Sue Ann Parker, giving and going all the way to their enemy's goal. Sue Jen caught the stick to her shin just above the pad and crumpled. But the play continued, with Hannah sprinting across the field just as the defender wound up to fire the ball as hard as she could. She shot a fraction of a second before Hannah's stick made contact. The ball lifted off the field and traveled in the direct line to my sister's face. Yoda was off the bench before the ref blew the whistle. I was right behind him. She was only knocked out for a second. She demanded to be put back in the game, even though the ball had snapped the frame of her goggles. The coach ignored her and told us to take her to the trainer's office. The office was like an emergency room, with a moaning soccer player bleeding from the mouth on one table, and a shivering football player whose foot was stuck in an ice bucket on the next. We laid Hannah down on an empty table. I left messages for my parents at their offices and on their cell phones while the trainer, a short woman with red-rimmed glasses, checked out Hannah's head. When she finished poking and asking questions, she washed her hands. "Well?" I asked. "Nothing critical, but she needs to be seen by a doctor." Hannah tried to sit up. "It's just a little headache. I have to get back." Yoda gently pushed her down. "Forget it." The trainer finished drying her hands. "He's right. Your doctor will order x-rays of the skull and rule out fractures. He might want an MRI too if he suspects brain bleeding." "Her brain is bleeding?" Yoda asked, color draining from his face. "Shh! Not so loud," Hannah said. "I doubt it," the trainer said. "But doctors like to order tests, and it's better to be safe than sorry. So no more field hockey today. Are you 18 yet, Tyler?" "In November," I said. "Why?" She glanced at the clock. "If you were 18, I could release her to you. We'll keep trying to get a hold of your parents." To say I was shocked when my father showed up an hour later didn't come close. Dad never showed for emergencies. Not ever. Not when I fell off my bike and needed stitches. Not when I fell off my skateboard and needed pins in my arm. Not when Hannah had pneumonia so bad they saw x-rays of her and then put her in intensive care. And Mom sobbed in the plastic chair and there was nobody to take me home because I was only 5. But it was Dad standing over Hannah, brushing the hair off her forehead and talking to the trainer about what to do next. "Where's Mom?" Hannah asked, as confused as I was. "Her van broke down outside to Hamilton," Dad said. "Shh." Hannah's good eye found me. "What the fuck?" I shrugged. Dad was looking even rougher than usual, like he was training for a marathon or was on chemotherapy. But he was there, and that counted for something. Half a point, maybe. Then his cell phone rang. He glanced at the number. "I'll be right back," he told the trainer. "I have to take this call." He stepped outside and closed the door, but we could hear him when he started yelling. "Is he talking to Mom?" Hannah whispered. I listened. "No, somebody named Stuart. It's work." She closed her eyes. When he came back, the trainer gave Dad a piece of paper with instructions on it. We helped Hannah get to her feet. She batted our hands away. Hannah rode with Dad to the ER so the doc could check her out, just in case. Yoda wanted to go too, but Dad gave him the evil eye and said this was a family matter. I wound up driving Yoda home in his car because he was so freaked out. Exploding Death Stars was one thing, but watching your girlfriend get knocked out cold was another. 34. The concussion turned out to be minor. The only damage was that Hannah's team lost and she had to sit out the next 4 games. She sat them out on Yoda's lap. He claimed that the black eye was cute. If aliens had crawled out of my sister's forehead and nestled in her nose hair, he also would have called that cute. The day after Hannah's accident, Dad had to leave for some mysterious meeting in Omaha or Topeka or God knows where. He and Mom had a screaming match in the kitchen just before he left. The postal look on his face when he stalked out to the taxi made me think I should steal the gun hidden in his bottom drawer and toss it in the river. Mom kept busy photographing dogs and Santa hats and antlers for other people's Christmas cards. I helped her by combing real estate listings for better studio space. She said it was impossible to find a landlord who wouldn't mind that most of her clients had 4 legs and unpredictable bathroom needs. I suggested again that she should take pictures of people who were generally better at using the bathroom. That made her laugh. We didn't talk about Dad or Omaha. Bethany was able to ditch her crutches a couple days after Hannah got creamed. I was afraid this meant the end of our relationship. Not that it exactly was a relationship, not quite, but she would sit next to me at lunch a couple of times a week and grab my arm or punch my arm, an average of 1.2 times a day. She waved to me in the halls and hadn't blocked my screen name, so there was hope. I did push-ups every night until my arms shook. Chip and I had reached a standoff. He didn't like me talking to Bethany or standing near Bethany or kissing the ground Bethany walked on. That much was obvious, but he just stared at me like a gorilla and cracked his knuckles whenever I was around. The knuckle cracking was supposed to intimidate me. Maybe if I was a walnut or pecan. And the staring? He had miles to go before he even compared to my father. Dad came home after 4 days spent in God knows where. He didn't say anything when he walked in, just set his suitcase in the laundry room and went straight downstairs. 2 weeks into October, I finally figured out how to get Gormley across the Tophet sulfur pits. All he had to do was lash himself to a nightmare. Duh. I leveled up, down, actually, to 36, the frozen plains of despair. The time I dedicated to crossing the pit contributed to a failed calc quiz and a plunging of my government grade from a solid C to a whiny D. But there are sacrifices you have to make if you're going to get anywhere in hell. 35. Our homecoming football game had always been held on the Friday of Columbus Day weekend to give everyone an extra day to recover from the hangovers. No, not really. It was held on the Friday of Columbus Day weekend because our arch rivals, the Forestdale Bulldogs, needed an extra day for their hangover recovery. We Washington Warriors prided ourselves on intelligent drinking. That's what people said anyways. Since our football team was 0-7, there was not much interest in the game itself. There was a lot of talk about parties that I was not invited to, but nobody bothered about our chances. That all changed when we got to school on Friday. Instead of our normal crowd hanging around in the front of the building, streams of chattering people looking strangely awake were hurrying toward the Warrior Stadium. There, the police had cordoned off the gate with yellow crime tape. We ran around behind the bleachers to stare through the chain link fence. "Those bastards," my little sister muttered. Some devious Forestdale bulldog, had burned Warrior Suck, WARIORSSUCK, exclamation point, into our sacred football sod with weed killer. My fellow students wore vengeance and punched the fence until it jangled. Members of the football team were told to kill the opposition so that we could regain our lost pride. This wasn't just a prank, it was a declaration of war. I stood very still. Were people staring at me? Did they think this was my handiwork? Did they think I was stooped so low? Of course they did. I was a moron who specialized in misspelling defacings of the school property. Maybe I should curse loudly or hawk a loogie and spit on the ground just to prove I was not the traitor. I twisted my head around looking for Chip and the Chipettes, half expecting them to drag me on the field, tear me limb from limb, and set my corpse on fire. I didn't do this, did I? "Hannah, where was I last night?" I whispered. "What are you talking about, you idiot? Just help me out. What was I doing last night?" "You tried to pay me to I am Bethany and convince her to go out with you." And then you took a shower that was so long you emptied the hot water tank. Oh, that. Thank you, I said. I couldn't have done it. It wasn't me. Good. Sometimes I scared myself, because once you've thought long and hard enough about doing something that's colossally stupid, you feel like you've actually done it, and then you're never quite sure what your limits are. 36. Principal Hughes went on the loudspeaker during homeroom to assure us all that the police were investigating the crime and that the criminals would be found. No retaliation of any kind was to be allowed, but we were supposed to encourage our football team to do their best. Bethany said something to me right after announcements, but with all the whooping and hollering and the ringing of the bell, I couldn't hear her. I leaned closer. Say that again? She smelled like cinnamon and her lips were wet. She smiled and pushed her hair back. I said, are you going to the game tonight? What game? She laughed as if I had made a joke and gave my shoulder a little shove. The football game, duh. I could be. Should I be? Do not touch her, I warned myself. Do not touch her, kiss her, bury your face in her hair, or throw her over your shoulder and head for the nearest cave. These would all be bad choices, and they would all have immediate negative consequences. No touching. Well, yeah, Tyler, that would be nice. She picked up her books and settled them on her hip. It would be nice if you came to the game. It would be nicer if you sat next to me. And it would be nicest if you brought me a cup of hot chocolate, because it's going to be cold tonight. Gotta go. We're late. Don't ask me what happened for the next 8 hours. I'm pretty sure I was unconscious. 37. Yoda stayed after school to watch Hannah's game. I walked home. It was finally sinking in. Bethany wanted me, to sit next to her. That was extremely close to a date, which was a half step away from permission to make out with her and touch her glorious private bits and so on, and etc. A car almost hit me a block away from the school. I growled at it, bared my teeth. My testosterone was peaking at world record levels. I had new hair sprouting on my chest and stomach. I turned into Wolfman with a half life-threatening hard-on, all because of a cinnamon-smelling girl who wanted me to sit next to her. I took another shower as soon as I got home. I also took some personal time to think things over. Yeah, not going into details, thank you very much. Then I set my alarm clock and fell asleep for a couple of hours. Being wanted by the woman of your dreams is exhausting work. I slept through the alarm. I had 30 minutes to become a confident, manly man, shaved, dressed, relaxed, and sitting on a metal bench armed with several gallons of hot chocolate. Crap. I took another shower. A quick one because I was already beginning to stink of panic. I cut my chin shaving. I dressed in boxers and socks, all clean. One of my new shirts, a sweatshirt and jeans, clean too. And sneakers. Then ran downstairs. Yoda had just arrived. Hannah was already out. I just wanted to ask Mom if I could make some hot chocolate, or if I should buy some at Starbucks when Dad pulled into the driveway. Hannah's eyes widened. Why is he so early? This is early? Yoda asked. Way early, she said. I was thinking I would sneak out and run for the hills, but Dad stormed in before I could say anything. We all watched him walk into the kitchen, put his briefcase on the table. He took off his jacket and draped it over the back of a chair. He loosened his tie, then stopped, as if he had just noticed the four of us standing there. What are you doing home? I blurted out. I live here, he explained, and it's dinner time. It's been a while since we all sat down, and we can't eat dinner, Hannah said. It's homecoming tonight. We have to leave or we'll be late. Dad put his hands up like a traffic cop. Whoa, right there, young lady. Who are you going with? Yoda raised his hand like he was in class. I'm taking her, Mr. Miller. Dad tilted his head to the side, confused. Calvin? Yes, Calvin, Hannah said, grabbing Yoda's hand and starting for the door. I'll be home by 11. Dad's voice turned icy. You do not have permission to leave. Hannah froze. Yoda swallowed hard. I was going out too, I said, in an uncomfortably high voice. I cleared my throat. They're going with me. We're all going together. To the game.
Like hell you are. Dad, I have plans, I said. Visions of every straight guy at school on their knees offering hot chocolate to Bethany Goddess Milbury. Dad stepped between us. Excuse me. Mom stepped between us and picked up Dad's jacket. Look, Bill, I'll cook a nice dinner tomorrow. She folded the jacket neatly over her arm. Why don't you and I go someplace quiet and catch up with each other? I want dinner with my family in my house tonight, Dad announced. End of discussion. I'll make some quick sandwiches and heat up some soup, Mom said. We have leftover chicken, extra crispy. Dad smacked the counter with his hand so hard that a bowl of apples jumped. He waited for the echoes to die away before he spoke again, quietly. We have a freezer packed with food, he said. Please make me a decent dinner. He picked up his briefcase. Calvin is going home. Hannah can stay in her room until it's time to eat. And Tyler, mow the goddamn lawn. I weighed my options. Was the chance of sitting next to Bethany for a few hours worth the guaranteed wrath of my father, which included a night of bellowing rage, the total annihilation of my self-esteem, broken glasses, and possibly getting tossed out of the house? Well, yeah, of course it was. But it was not worth the nastiness that would also be inflicted upon my sister, who was already tearing up over the faded bruise on her eye. Or my mother, who was pouring herself a tonic-free gin and tonic, the first she'd had in weeks. Yoda left. Hannah slammed her door. I stayed and mowed the lawn as badly as I could, as the streetlights flickered on, dreaming up 1,001 ways to hurt the man who spawned me. 38. Mom did it. She cooked a sit-down dinner for 4. Pork roast, baked potatoes, steamed corn, a side salad with your choice of dressing. Sure, it was 9 p.m. by the time we got to eat it, but you couldn't rush perfection. Pass the pork, please, Dad said. Mom had decided to pass on dinner. She was passed down on her bed. The cover story was that she had a migraine. What she really had was enough gin to put down a horse, and a desire to shove a roast up Dad's. But no, honest, her migraines were always the worst when the seasons were changing. It had to do with the barometric pressure. Hannah passed the meat plate to my father. Another piece, Tyler? Dad asked. Throw a potato at his face. Smash the platter over his head. Pick up a table, throw it through the sliding glass door, then heave him out too. Find a grenade. Butter, please, I said. Hannah passed me butter. I divided half a stick between 2 baked potatoes. Hannah had scooped out the inside of her potato and was mashing it on the plate. Dad cut his slice of pork. The knife squealed on the plate. Dad did not flinch. He cut and chewed, cut and chewed. How was school? He asked. Hannah spooned cold, overcooked carrots onto her potatoes. Bashes. You don't even know what that means, Dad said. Huh. I guess that was supposed to sound like laughter. Yes, Hannah said carefully. I do. We're studying it. Dad grunted. Coming home at a half-decent hour, forcing Mom to cook, making jokes at the table. Something was desperately wrong with my father. I studied him whenever he looked at Hannah. It wasn't just the bloodshot eyes or the stain on his tie or the twitch in his left cheek. It was what I got when I put all those things together. Like, you ever smell a milk jug when you open it? You don't think you smell anything funky, so you pour yourself a big glass. Then you take a giant gulp, and literally as soon as it hits your mouth, you know it's gone bad. So you spit it into the sink and race upstairs to gargle. Then you finally stop needing to heave and realize that you did smell something funny at first. You just didn't know what to call it. That's what I thought of when I looked at my father. What else are you studying? He asked my sister. How's algebra? Hannah obliterated her carrots with the tines of her fork. Algebra's fine. She blended her carrots and potatoes. Not that you care, she said under her breath. What did you say? Dad asked. Stop playing with your food. there a problem? Hannah pushed her chair away from the table. She stood up and let her napkin float to the ground. May I please be excused? Her voice shook just a little. You haven't finished, Dad said. I'm not hungry. I still have homework. Algebra homework. Dad made her stand there for a full minute before he answered. Fine. Hannah couldn't hold it in any longer. As she bolted to her room, she said, I'll check on Mom. She started sobbing halfway up the stairs. We looked at the empty doorway and listened until the door slammed overhead. Dad carried his empty glass into the kitchen and dropped a couple of ice cubes into it, then uncorked a bottle. He had his back. He came back carrying a full glass of scotch, his third. This was weird too. He never drank more than one a night. I reached for the pepper. How's work? Pass it over here, will you? I handed him the shaker. You seem, busy. He shook the pepper on his carrots. That's one word for it. He put down the shaker, picking up his glass, and then took a long, slow sip. I waited, but he just sat there, elbows leaning on the table, glass in his hand, looking down at the spot where Mom wasn't sitting. He turned the glass to the light from the chandelier, so it caught and reflected it. Some of the branch offices aren't playing by the rules. He looked over the rim. Playing by the rules cuts into commission. Why is that your problem? Because I'm compliance, and the feds are investigating. He took a big slug of scotch and set the glass down heavily. Enough of that. I've almost got it under control. Your last probation meeting's coming up, isn't it? I shook my head. One more in a couple of weeks. One in November. I told you it would go fast. He smeared a piece of meat and put it into his mouth. Another couple of months and nobody will remember it even happened. Yeah, except the entire student body, the police force, anyone within a 50-mile radius of the school. I'll go with you, he added. What? Where? He talked while he chewed. To your probation meeting. The last one. I'll make sure all those loose ends are tied up. He cut the fat off his next bite of meat and pushed it into the edge of his plate. Dad hated the feeling of fat in his mouth. You don't have to. It'll waste a whole afternoon. Maybe Mom could go. Your mother and I have already discussed this. I thought she told you. Bet it slipped her mind. Out of nowhere, he smacked the table with his left hand. Damn it! She promised! The veins running on the sides of his neck beat like writhing snakes. Whoa, hold on. Mom must have forgotten. Her migraines. Dad, you okay? He took a deep breath and blinked. Then he struck another piece of meat in his mouth. Of course I am. What a ridiculous question. I was just surprised, that's all. I looked at my plate so I wouldn't have to look at him chew. Is there any chance they won't expel my record? Expunge. Really expunge. You keep your nose clean and pull your grays out of the toilet. It'll be like it never happened. This pork is tasty, don't you think? Like it never happened. Like my mother was lying down because of a migraine. 39. Homecoming Friday night play-by-play action. Looked at French book by Albert somebody. 0.25 hours. Printed out English essay Yoda emailed. 2 minutes. AP Art History reaction paper. 15 minutes. I am. Monitored constantly. The entire world was away. Doodled breasts in government textbook. 20 minutes. Surfed online journals. When I got sick of reading away messages. Online porn. You don't want to know. Snack. Leftover KFC followed by a handful of Tums. Thoughts of ripping out the drywall with my bare hands. Every other minute or so. AP Calc. 0.75 hours until I threw the book in the trash. Played Toffet. 5 hours. Level 36 in Toffet looked like Antarctica with the
average temperature hovering around 70 degrees below zero. I was confused. Hell was supposed to be too hot, not too cold. But level 36 was Inuit hell. I had to spend way too much gold on a fur-lined jacket, pants, and boots for Gormley. I had to sacrifice a spell to start a fire so he wouldn't freeze to death. I mean, you can't really die in hell. You'd be reincarnated as weaker, over and over until you were reduced to a worm spirit. My father's hell level had not shown up yet. Maybe it was being trapped in an office with a screaming boss whose butt you had to kiss day and night. Maybe it was coming home to a wife and kids who bolted for the door when they saw you. Or maybe it was waking up every morning knowing you had to do the exact same thing you did the day before and the day before that, like the guy who had to roll the boulder up the mountain over and over. Except you know that when you die there's no release, because you're already dead. And this was what you won as the booby prize in the eternal soul roulette. I wonder what the devil would say to my father. Would they watch baseball? Discuss the bond market? I fell asleep with my head on my desk. Dad woke me up at around 5 a.m. He was already dressed for work, black suit, white shirt, gray tie. He said he had to get to the office early. I did not tell him it was Saturday. I wasn't in the mood for a confrontation. 40. On Monday morning, my father went to his office again. My mother ate dry toast for breakfast. Then she went to work too. She had to take pictures of the mayor's terriers wearing red and green plaid vests. My sister and I went to school. We learned that we had lost the homecoming game. The perfect American family continued to lead their perfectly bullshit lives.